AD&D, we have to go back to the Wolflands. It's been quite a while since we've taken a look at this. When last we met, I gotta be honest with you, I don't exactly remember. Let me bring the noobs up to speed on what we're doing here. This is a solo live play of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. It's a solo RPG, but we're not really playing Dungeons & Dragons here. Before we get started with the story, I'm going to do something a little weird for D&D. I'm going to explain what we're doing here. I'm going to explain the idea behind this little experiment that we're running. And I'm not going to bore you to death with, let me tell you about my campaign. I might be a little salty. I was doing some research on Birthright today. And just as a brief aside, while I check my notes for where we last left our heroes, the guys that are trying to sell me on Birthright, they talk a lot like the guys that sell me on Battletech. They spend the first 10 minutes telling me what it's not. Well, you could talk forever about what it's not. Don't tell me what it's not. Tell me what it is. And then they say, the good thing about Birthright is there's actually like 2 or 3 different ways to play it, and you can play it any way you want. And also, if you don't like any aspect of it, you can just change things and really make it your own. And so nothing that's in here matters, and all is one, and one is all, and the universe is within you. And it's all very just kind of standard hippy-dippy. We're going to play AD&D by the rules. Now, because we're playing solo, we're not really getting the full D&D experience, and I want to caution you guys. Oh, here it is, right? So here, way back in February, it's been almost a year. We left. There was a battle in Gobbiton, and then the Gobs returned, and the Steiners were recruiting. But I think the Steiners, they died, and so the youngest Steiner came to recover their bodies. Is where we left off. As I was saying, when you're playing these games, and this game in particular, solo, it's a very wonderful and healthy exercise. I highly recommend it to everyone, but you're not really playing D&D because D&D is best played if you squint your eyes just right, maybe you are playing, but you're really playing it at a low level. Solo D&D is the scrimmage of role-playing games. It's a great way to hone your skill set. It's a low-pressure way to familiarize yourself with what's in the books, where to master that book control that's so important when you're sitting across the table, when you're sitting at a Discord server, and you're playing this game the way it was meant to be played as a Bronstein-style domain level game with elements of, maybe you're running a dungeon crawl where you've got different people involved at the party level, but it's really a PvP. I mean, I'm not going to go through all of that, right? We've already demonstrated and established that if you want to play this game at a high level, there are certain things you have to do. There's certain things that your game has to incorporate, and Mother May I ain't it. Granted, there are elements of that in every game with a referee that you play, but the whole default that the DM is always right. No, these things are right. This is not the tabula rasa. This is the Rosetta Stone that will allow you to play any style of RPG from the dungeon delves to the domain level, mastering kingdoms. And that's really what I want to focus on in this next season, if you will, of the solo version of AD&D. And just to show you how easy it is to implement one-to-one time, even when you step away from the campaign for a long time, let's go ahead and take a look at where we left off. Now, I took fairly extensive notes. I'll be honest, I haven't gone back and watched the last set of live plays. Key difference between what we're doing today. I'm hoping to do more live streaming of this, but I thought it would be wise, at least for this first video, introducing you to the 2025 season of Solo AD&D, to kind of lay out the vision and explain what it is we're hoping to do. And also, in a real way, shine a light on how robust this game is, even if you're not ignoring the rules, even if you're trying to incorporate as many of the rules as possible. So here we have the 2024. The last I knew, on 2/7, the Steiner family orders... Oh, so let's go back just a step here, right? We had a Steiner TPK. There were 4 brothers. They ran into the Landscanorks in the Reddit tomb. And for those of you that need the little map here, let me just show you. We Our primary adventuring, these are 30-mile hexes. This is Corvusberg. This is the base camp that people have. Most of our adventuring has been over here in the Beaufort Mountains, and then over here in the eastern reaches of the Deadwood. And if we look very closely, and here's where we kind of slip into bad old habits, let me tell you about my campaign world. That's all anybody wants to talk about Birthright. I want to know what it's like to play the game. Let me tell you about the magic users. Let me tell you about this kingdom. Let me tell you about the Vikings. Let me tell you. No, I want to know what it's like to play the game. That's all. Don't tell me about your character. Just tell me what. Anyway, I just want to know what it feels like to play the game. So this is Corvusberg, and then our guys had principally been taking boats across the Deadwood. There's a black beach over here, and they walked the old road back to the town of Harrington, where Lord Stephen of Harrington is one of the guys they met. So here it is these are now, what is this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These are 5-mile hexes, and this is going to be important for what we're doing. Just bear with me. So if you walk the old road, that takes you to the Harrington. It's 3 days away. And then if we look at the other side of the Long Lake is what it's called. So here's Black Beach, and then here's Castle Weasel. This is really what I wanted to draw your attention to, because what we have here is a 30-mile hex that has only been half explored. There's a giant crater here. We know there's something buried. We don't know what it is. We have a little table of possibilities. We're going to have to get down there and do that. And like excavate it. But before we can do that, we have to finish exploring the hex. We have to carve out a safe place. And hey, this will be really easy. We know orcs patrol the hills over here. Here's the Redetomb. This is what inspired my little digression here. So if you take a boat across the Black Beach, then you're only, these are 5-mile hexes. You're only 5 miles from Castle Weasel. Castle Weasel is on a high promontory. You can probably see Long Lake from Castle Weasel. It's in a defensive position. It fell into ruin a long time ago when the whole Deadwood fell into ruin. We don't know what that cataclysm was. We only know that it was there and that this whole area is rife with ruins. If there's a castle, there's probably some communities around there. We may find some ruined villages. That will come into play later. We killed the Weasels. Well, I think the Steiner brothers killed the Weasels. Roger the Hammer Steiner is now, when we last left him, he was tasked with, so let's go back to my notes, he was tasked with recovering the bodies of his fallen brothers. And he has done that. So here we have your big goblin raid. What do we got? We got Steiner TPK at the hands of the Landscanorks. The Landscanorks they live in the Beaufort Mountains. There was a big goblin raid that returned to Gobbiton, so the goblins are doing good. The goblins began training wolf riders. Sergeant Zim attempts to return to Corvusberg. He was killed. So, unfortunately, the last guy that could have told our boy, because that gives our boy Roger, on February 7th, go find your lost brothers. So he begins recruiting hired soldiers. Roger Steiner goes forth. The hammer hits hard. He's got Captain Von Trapp, that is a cleric, with him. Why am I explaining all this to you? Well, when I first set out to play this game, I wanted to show you that the game scales really well. And unfortunately, I set too high a bar for myself. Too high of a mountain. And I really struggled. Lots of characters died. You guys know, there's probably a list of the fallen in here. Pour a 40 on the curb for them. But as I said, I wasn't ready for it. Ready for this. Let me see if I can find it real quick. I could probably edit this out. So there's Harrington. This is a couple of more notes to familiarize ourselves. The other guys, this is a venturing band that was running around. So here is the tomb of the ruins. This is the tomb of the unknown Redditors. One of my viewers offered that up. There's a level 2, so that's pretty cool. The Ligmatic Cloister of the Beaufort Mountains. This is where the Landscanorks live. And then here's the monster tables when you're in the Ligmatic. And then blah, blah, blah. Here's the forces of the Landscanorks. And this is really what I was hoping to get to a lot earlier and spend more time doing. And that's the kind of domain play. It's kind of the conquering the area. Building an army. Right? So this is Muffin Top. This is where the halflings live. I don't remember where that is. But I'm glad I took all these good notes. I'm still looking for here we go. Look at all these people that died. These are the death notes. Bianca died. Broseph Forrester, Ho Lehman, Jeff Capes, Aragoth, I don't remember him, Swolgar Beefman. Look, there's 30 TPK, so we just didn't do great. And part of that is because it's really hard to play this as a solo game, particularly because each character has enough of a cognitive load for a single player to stay interested. I mean, you know this, right? You guys know D&D. This isn't a game for noobs. Trying to manage all of their different abilities and skills at the same time that I'm trying to entertain you guys, it's just too heavy a lift, to be honest with you. So with that in mind, I thought we would see if there's another way to engage with the AD&D rules, aside from, building Konasborough. That's way up north. Yanbag, that we're never going to get there, right? Here's a hovel. So what we're going to do, because we're not going to get very far around here. We're going to we've got an escape route, right? So we got to pick a hex to explore, and we've already half explored the Deadwood. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at one little section here in the DMG that has inspired a lot of conversation over the month of December. We're going to do a little bit of hex clearing. And I kind of go back and forth because this is one of those examples. This is a classic example of what people think Gary writes like. And they translate this to the whole book. Now, I'm not ready to go that far. I think this book is very usable. It's just, it's not easy. You gotta have persistence, dedication. You gotta be smarter than the average bear. It's not written for fourth graders. And I'm telling you right now, guys, the modern day iterations of Dungeons and Dragons are like the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal. They're targeting a fourth grade reading level. Gary is targeting, I'll bet you, if you took this and dumped it into one of those algorithm machines that will tell you what the reading level is, I'll bet you this is at least at the 12th grade level. And that's the 1970s 12th grade level. Nowadays, this is probably a graduate level reading course. Not easy. But it is fairly clear if you just are willing to pursue it, to make mistakes, come back. And that's a big part of what we're doing here is we're learning it. So let me find that section and we can kind of drill down and really take a good look at what it means to clear an area and carve your own kingdom out of the wilds. This is part of the game for a long time, and it's part of the game that everybody understands. The idea behind the Caves of Chaos is that if you do well enough, you can take over the keep. You're creating your own little fiefdom. You're going to clear the wilderness. This is a game that embraces the colonizing roots of the American spirit. We are going full Manifest Destiny here, and we're going to drive those dirty orcs and goblins and wolves out of the lands, and they shouldn't be mad at us. If they didn't want us to retake Castle Weasel and build little villages full of happy little villagers, they shouldn't have moved into the land before we did. So here it is, Territory Development by Player Characters 94. And I just want to take a real quick look at this before I explain how we're going to handle the interim, what has been 9 months since we last saw Roger the Hammer Stein, first level fighter. When player characters reach upper levels and decide to establish a stronghold, rule a territory, you must have a fairly detailed map. And this is really important for those of you that have been following the discussion on social media. You must have a detailed information on hand to enable this to take place. You must have a large-scale map which shows areas where this is possible, a detailed cultural and social treatment of this area, and those which bound it, and you must have some extensive information available as to who and what lives to be claimed and held by the player character. Most of these things are provided for you in one form or another in this work or in the various playing aid packages which are commercially available. So Gary is now telling us that if you really want to do territory development, you're going to have to jump off the zero prep bus. But I'm going to stay on it. I'm just going to see if I can convert it on the fly. The exact culture of society are up to you. Well, thanks, Gary. But there are many guides to help you even here. So here's the big one. Assume the player in question decides to set up a stronghold about 100 miles from a border town. That's not us. We're about 10 miles from a border town. But if you want to walk there on foot, so it's 10 miles as the crow flies, it's more like 30 because you got to walk around Long Lake, right? Then it says, he asks if there's a place you can build a small concentric castle on a high bluff overlooking a river, right? And then you can say, yeah, you do. So this is where we really get into the media. the meat of things. If you have not already prepared a small-scale map in the area, use the random generation method when the party is exploring. Disregard results which do not fit in with your ideas for the place. Discretion must prevail. There are times where it is suitable to disregard the rolls of the dice. If you are doing zero prep and you come up with some nonsense, I generally favor, look, I told the dice I trust them, I rolled them, whatever comes up, I'll find an answer. I'm a pretty smart guy. I can rationalize anything away, it'll be fine. But here Gary explicitly gives you permission, or does he? Because what I've found from reading this and rereading it is that this is largely kind of advice. I'm going to try to adhere to this as much as possible, but let's just dig down a little deeper. You and the player, let's see, both you and the player will be making maps of the territory on a scale of about 200 yards per hex, so that 9 across will allow the superposition of a large hex outline of about 1 mile across. Use actual time, to keep track of game time spent exploring and mapping, somewhat tedious but necessary. Check once for random monsters in each hex, but any monster and not driven off will be there from then on, except those flying or passing through. Man, there is a whole lot to unpack there. So first things first, let me go ahead and show you what my large-scale map looks like. You got to have a large scale, right? At 30 miles across, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's about 200. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's, we're looking at about 200 by 200 miles. Did I get that right? No, it's 6 times 30. Yeah. And then we have this map, which is 30 miles across. And as I said, each of these smaller hexes is 5 miles across. So the first thing I'm looking at here is, okay, that means if we're going to go with 200-yard hexes, and oh, by the way, the overland map in B2, keep on the borderlands, the squares in that map, wait a minute, what am I telling you when I can show you? Show, don't tell, that's the rules here. This map, by the way, is 1 square equals, that's 100 yards. Okay, so 2 squares here is 200 square yards. All right, so let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Call it about 20 squares. Oh, look. So 20, cut that in half, right? So 200, 200, 200. This is about a mile. Oh, this is one of those 1 mile hexes. Just kind of look at this. This is about 2 by 3 miles, which is about half the size of one of my hexes. So you can see that this is a really good translation of this. These two are intimately tied together in ways that we don't often talk about. And I wanted to show you this again because there's something really important going on here. If you have a battle to fight between large-scale forces, which you will eventually, particularly if the keep is going to war against the Caves of Chaos. That's Caves of the Unknown. All right. It's still, same point stands. Okay, 1.5 miles instead of a mile. If you're going to fight a battle in here somewhere, then what you have is a very easy way to go from this scale to the tabletop. Remember that Gary gives us measurements in these rules for 1 inch equals 10 yards. That means one of these squares is 10 inches by 10 inches. Oh, well, if you've got a standard size ping pong table, that's 5 feet by 9 feet. That's 60 by, let's just call it 80 inches across, right? That's 6 by 8 squares. So you can drop a little, you can just count them. If you're going to do a battle, that square is going to look a little something like this around the keep. Oh, it's really easy to translate from this to, if you're going to fight a battle right here with a swamp on one side and the road and the woods, like I could see any sort of, there's all kinds of different battles that you could fight. A 6 by 8 square right here would have the woods on one side, the hill on the other. This is meant for tabletop miniature war games. It translates so well from here to here. And the same thing is true if you are going with hexes like this. If I have Castle Weasel right in the center here, then hey, we're good to go. So the question then becomes, well, wait a minute. Does that mean now? And let me just step back, and I'm going to show you a little graphic that I came up with kind of on the fly. This is what it would look like if you had 9 hexes across by 9 hexes across in a single 1 mile hex, right? And that's going to be particularly relevant because the second half of this paragraph says, after mapping the central hex and the 6 which surround it. All right, now here I have a question. Gary, are we talking the central 1 mile hex and the 6 1 mile hexes around it? Or are we talking about the 200-yard hex? It's got to be the 1 mile hex. I don't see any way that he's saying, once you've mapped an area 600 yards by... That doesn't make any sense. So once you've cleared 1.5 miles out from your castle, remember your castle's in the center of the hex, it's going to be a half a mile to get to along the radius. That's another mile across the next hex. So once you've cleared the first 1.5 miles, and oh, by the way, if you're checking as normal, it turns out you're probably going to have somewhere around, I don't know, 7 to 10 different encounters. Some of those are going to be passing through, let's call it 7. Oh, some of those are going to be individuals. So let's call it like 3 or 4. You're going to have 3 or 4 little encounters. You're going to have a little mini campaign right there. Your little sandbox only has to be 3 miles across by 3 miles across. That's those 7 hexes. And once you clear those hexes, we have the advantage, skipping ahead to Castle Weasel. Remember that the Steiner brothers already killed the Weasel. No, wait. It was actually Aragoon killed the Weasels. Or did he help them? I don't know. It doesn't matter. The point is that the Weasels are already dead. So one of those big encounters has already been dealt with. Is that cheating a little bit? Yeah, well, I mean, maybe. I mean, if you're really looking for a gotcha for me, then okay, guilty as charged. But remember that we're not really playing the game. We're doing a little bit of a tutorial, a little demonstration, a little learning process, and a little experimentation. So that's enough of that. After mapping the 6 which surround it, workers can be brought in to commence construction of the castle. As this will require a lengthy period of game time, the player characters will have to retain a garrison to assure the safety of the crew and the progress of the work. Each day there will be a 1 in 20 chance a monster will wander into one of the 7 hexes explored by the character unless patrolling in the territory beyond the area is carried on. Okay, so now we've got a little mini game that we can put together using those either as written or a little less informally. And we're not really quite to where the campaign is going to kick off yet, because we have to establish that little mini sandbox, clear it out, and then we can get started. And we've only done a portion of this 5-mile hex. You don't really have a domain until you clear the full 30-mile hex. If you look at the text a little bit more, it says 30-mile radius, which means really on this map we should put our castle right here on the intersection of 3 and then clear all 3 of these hexes. Or really, if you want to be particularly anal retentive about it, you would say, okay, if this is my castle in the center of this hex, and I know that's not a great drawing, then I need to draw a circle, and oh look, I only need to clear a portion of each of these surrounding. Okay, listen. We're not going to be that anal retentive about this, okay? Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to drop the castle right here in the center, and we said, oh, each of these squares now is going to be 200 yards across. So if I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, well, actually, it's going to be 4.5, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. So this square right here, this is the area that we really need to clear. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I went too far. There we go. So there's our 1-mile hex. And then we need to draw these other hexes. I think that's going to go to about there. And it's going to look a little something like that. And after we clear out each of the entities in each of these hexes, and for the sake of expedience and learning process, what I'll do is I will generate one thing in each of these hexes. How is our lone first level fighter going to clear that out? And the secret to that is venture capitalism. I'm kidding. This is a medieval style game. we are going to assume that Roger the Hammerstein has been given a war chest. And I asked around, and I said, well, what kind of war chest do you think would be appropriate for this? Like, how much are you going to have to spend in order to get your boys out here, keep them supplied, keep them safe? And the answer to that question is a little loosey-goosey. It's like anything else when it comes to this particular hobby and this game in particular. The answer is it depends. What exactly are you going to do? Before I tell you what my final answer is and how we're going to proceed with this campaign as a more hex clearing, domain building kind of experiment here and with some elements of exploration, the big thing is, one of the ways that I'm kind of cheating a little bit here is that I'm starting with a castle that's half built. Castle Weasel is there. The foundations have been laid. The towers are there. And so what that's going to do is save us a tremendous amount of time. Gary was very kind, and I'm not going to go through this in too much detail, but just to kind of warn you, he said, look, when your guys say, I want to build a castle, he's got the rules for that right here. He's got the rules for what's the difference in price between a light footman and a heavy footman, and on a monthly basis, right? And we're not going to go into too much detail for that. What I really want to impress upon you is that this style of game that we're looking at is going to be zoomed out. You are typically used to looking at a single character. You know, we've got one guy, and our control sheet has a certain set of switches and buttons. It's got, these are the stats that we're primarily concerned with. I need to know how strong is my one guy? How many hits can my one guy take? When we start this style of hex clearing, we're asking an entirely different question. We're going to step out. Not only do I not care about the hit points of my guy, I don't care about the hit points of the guys that are serving him. Each of those guys is a resource in its own right. We are going to pretend like we are Wall Street guys. We're going to pretend like we are, globalists in the real world. We don't view them as people. We view them as independent, not independent because we want them dependent on us, obviously, but they are individual cogs in the machine. They are simply human resources. They are human capital for us to use. That may sound a little crude, but this is a game. And we're going to step into the shoes of a ruler. And he's going to start out as a very low-level ruler, probably somewhere around 6th level. He's been off adventuring, and I chose 6th level for a very important reason. Because our organization chart has to start with a 5th level captain. And that's because a 5th level captain is going to be able to order 5 2nd level. So this is a 2nd level lieutenant. And we need 5 of those because each 2nd level lieutenant can boss around one 1st level sergeant. And each 1st level sergeant can boss around 10 men. And so what that does is it gives us a nice little order of battle that we can use for clearing out this 3x3 hex. Instead of worrying about our individual character or our captain, we are going to be using this level as our building block. What are we doing with this squad? Well, this squad is going to stay home. This little squad is going to market. This little squad is going to go scouting. This little squad is going to secure the castle while I hire a bunch of craftsmen to take the ruins and turn them into a proper castle. Right? So going back to why are we starting at Castle Weasel? The answer to that is on page 107, constructions. You want to buy an arrow slit? That'll set you back 3 gold pieces. Do you want to buy a stone gatehouse? That'll cost you 2,000 gold pieces. And then you have to worry about construction time. So if we're building just a moat house, a shell keep, a small castle, that's anywhere from 14 to 20 months. Well, I don't need to do that because I've already got the core of this done. We're going to cut our construction time in half because the foundations are already laid. We'll go into more of this in future episodes in a lot more detail. Same thing with our order of battle. I just wanted to warn you that this is kind of what we're doing to shorten things, to expedite things, and this is what you can do in your AD&D campaign. When you have a character reach name level and he says, I want to start carving out a domain of my own, then the local lord or duke or king will say, there's a county over there on the border of my territory that's infested with goblins. Goblins don't scare a 9th level fighter, but 600 goblins might. And he can't afford to think like an early career Conan anymore. He has to start thinking like Conan the King. He's got to start managing his guys. And this little order of battle here, I'm not shoving around one man. I'm shoving around a squad of men, is what we see in miniature war games. Some miniature war games are squad-based. You guys have all seen my 2mm armies. I have a 1-inch base that represents a full, battalion? Right? That's like, what is that, like 1,000 men on one little 1-inch base. All I had to do is adjust my focus and zoom out and think like what would this be? Who bosses? Like a major, right? We're going to start out at the level of the major, and we're hoping to get to the level of general. How does that happen? Well, we're going to turn that into a little game of our own. And how long does that take? Well, like I said, this is going to take it's going to take half as long. And in fact, we're going to have to think about exactly how we do that. I have already got a map ready to go of what Castle Weasel looks like. We flirted with it a little bit. We know there's one level of dungeons. There isn't a mega dungeon down there. So we're going to have to get some guys in addition to, this is a long way of getting to the answer. I still haven't told you this. My total budget for this expedition is 50,000 gold pieces. I'm going to spend 9,000 for the military. I'm going to spend 1,000 for support. And then my monthly salary is going to be about 2,400 gold pieces for all those people. If I do that for 10 months, that's going to leave 16,000 gold pieces left over for the castle repairs. In our next episode, we will break down exactly what all this means, where it goes, and how that's going to inform the style of solo game that we're going to play. Once I get my order of battle set up, and what I've designed is I've got a couple of squads of heavy foot who are my local guards. They're going to guard the territory. I've got a couple of squads of light foot. Some archers in there, some spear guys in there. They're cheap. Those are going to be my scouts. They're going to go out and they're going to try to clear the hexes for me. And then I have one unit of cavalry. They're going to protect my supply chain. They're going to protect my wagons going back and forth. I've got some wagons. I'll go over all of this in a lot more detail, but just to kind of warn you what this is going to look like. It's going to be 1-to-1 time. It takes a full week and a half to get from Castle Weasel back to Harrington. Okay? A couple of days to refit, rest, buy more supplies, 2 weeks to get back. I am only going to get one shipment per month. And the more successes I can brag about, the more that I can send messengers to brag about, the more reward I will get from the family back home as I invest into Castle Weasel. And so that's kind of the idea here. And I think this is going to be a fascinating look at an entirely different way of playing this game. And the nice part about it is, if we get into a situation where we run into, I've got 2 of my squads, 22 guys, and they run into, 30 goblins, we can run that battle. We can adjust our focus and drill down to this level. And then once we fight that battle, we can zoom back out if we want to. If we get hit by a raiding force of 200 orcs, then we better hope our defenses are stout, because we're going to be outnumbered 3-to-1. They're attacking our castle walls. We still have things like reaction checks. We still have wandering monsters, right? On average, about 1 every 20 days. Okay, well, maybe what I'll do is I'll say that that's going to be an average of 1.3. So we may tinker with the odds a little bit to try and be adhere to this as much as possible, while still allowing for the demonstration of the proof of concept to show you guys how you can use this game at different levels, and how you can explore chapters and passages of the Dungeon Master Guide that, even if you've read it 100 times, you've never really played the game quite like this before. It's possible. There's all kinds of areas left to explore in this game, and I hope you'll come along with me, because whether this is a success or not, we're going to have a great time with it. As I close out this video, let me just share with you a wonderful little song. We've got a theme song for Castle Weasel. This is by good friend of the channel, the Wolfman himself, is going to sing us out with a nice inspirational song here in the scrublands and the deadwood as we try to impose a little order back on the chaos. Until next time, I'm praying for you. Take it away, Wolfman.
In the roads of Castle Weasel we stand strong. Brave knights and adventurers sing our song. With courage in our hearts we'll build anew. The Wolflands will be free when we are through.